We have breaking news on a new Statcast tool to help us evaluate pitchers, and I think it can give us an opportunity to figure out who the next breakout pitchers are going to be. Subscribe to this channel if you want to win your fantasy baseball leagues, because we are always open to find the newest tools and technology to help you win your fantasy leagues. And that new tool is Miss Distance Leaderboard. So if you go to Baseball Savant, where you get your Statcast data, you go to the leaderboards, and you're going to see on here is a new thing on here. We'll start from the pitcher side. Swing timing and miss distance. This is going to tell you how much batters miss pitches. Kind of gives you an idea of who's throwing the best pitchers in baseball. And let's take a look and see what it can show us. So the example that they give you, of course, is one of the nastiest pitches in baseball, which is Mason Miller's slider. So the data you get is where are they in relation to the ball when it comes in. So compared to the length of the bat, is it centered to the sweet spot of the bat? Are they getting tied up? Is it too close to the hands, or are they flailing when it's too far out? And with Mason Miller's slider here, you can see it's unbelievable. It really just huge percent of the time people are flailing with the ball out at the end of the bat where you can't make great contact, or they're tied up here on the inside. Shockingly, I think this is a great one, having on timing. How early or late are they? And they're getting fooled by his slider, so they are way too early on the pitch, which is one reason why you're getting such a huge flail out at the end of the bat. And then are they over or under the bat? This is also very interesting. They are usually swinging over the ball, which is meaning it is probably breaking way more than they are expecting, and they have no chance to really line it up. So this is a super interesting tool, and you can see the potential for this down the road. I'm sure a year from now we're going to look at this and say we had no idea how to use this, and we're just flailing in ourselves in the beginning. But the ability to kind of see what types of pitches, when you talk about pitch shapes, what types of pitches and pitch shapes are confusing, or even looks that are confusing hitters the most. We've seen some things in Statcast that's super cool, like even a pitcher's extension, how far down towards the pitcher they get before they release the ball, but you couldn't see the effect of that. We might be able to see that on how early or late a batter is on pitches. So there's so much potential here. We're just getting to the beginning of it. This is day one for me, but what you can see here is you can also show the major league average. So this is why Mason Miller is so nasty, is because for the average slider that is thrown, this is the typical shape of it, where a lot more people are centered up on the ball, a lot more people are on time and are kind of lined up with the plane of the ball, and you can see how much his slider deviates from the normal, where you're getting kind of way more kind of flailing and tied up on the outside here. You're getting people that are way too early on his ball. And such a huge percentage versus average are swinging over his ball, which means he's probably getting more break on the ball, and they're expecting to be in a totally different spot. So now this is, scroll down, you can see here what they show you is this is ranked by now the average miss distance. You can see on average hitters miss Mason Miller's slider by 10.7 inches. That's absolutely a ridiculous number, and you can see some of the best pitches in baseball with this as well, which is really interesting to see. So you can see what are the best pitches that people are throwing. And interesting, Andrew Abbott, his curveball, he's getting an average of 9.3 inches missed on his. And one of the first things that pop into my mind is trying to look at is they also track the percent of flawed swings that you take, in which you kind of whiff. It's you're not lined up, centered, or on time. None of those are really accurate. You're just making a terrible swing, and usually that's going to translate into very poor contact, which is all of what a pitcher wants. Or you have what percent of the time do they get perfect contact, where everything is kind of lined up, centered, and on time. And you can see for Mason Miller, he has a very high percent of the time, 37% of the time, batters are making flawed swings at his pitches, and only 11% of the time are they making perfect contact. So from this, you can see how this is playing out. Obviously, by doing it by total miss distance is really interesting to see just how much people are missing. But I really wanted to do next is sort it by what are the most flawed swing percentages you can find. And so this now ranks the top flawed swing percentages by pitch in the majors. And what first popped out at me was really interesting is that a lot of the most nastiest ones are sliders. So sliders are really driving really flawed swings in baseball. and are getting some of the least amount of perfect contact, and that's probably why you're getting some great results out of that type of pitch. And then the next thing that popped out at me is actually Chase Burns. A lot of these pitchers you'll see are relievers, because relievers have some nasty one pitches. So if you're watching this, comment in the box below, how much would you have paid to have this kind of data on the relievers of the heyday and stuff like that? Mariano Rivera, I would love to see what the flawed swing data looked on his pitches and so forth. His pitch, I would say. So comment how much you would pay to see this data if they had it only started in 2023, but it would have been amazing to see that back in the old day for some of the pitchers that we love. But what's popping out to me is you have a lot of relievers, but Chase Burns is the first kind of starter that pops out with an amazing slider himself. Even though his missed distance is only on average about 5.5 inches, he's getting 27% flawed swings out of it. And so let's just take a quick look at this, because I want to learn how we can use this to identify better pitchers. Now, I've already done the work on the research to try to look at and trying to predict like what pitchers in the minors are known for having the best sliders, because obviously if sliders are having great results, and obviously Chase Burns is having great results with his slider, who should we take a look at? And the ones that they're tracking, comment if you have any other pitchers that you can think of as well, is that Hagen Smith, who may get a call up this Saturday. I just did a video on him, so you may want to keep an eye on Hagen Smith. Obviously, he's got to throw more strikes, but once he gets going and can actually throw strikes, his slider is also quite nasty. And then also Thomas White. I know he's injured right now, but I actually own both of them in my dynasty leagues. And interestingly, I said Bubba Chandler as well, which we may get a chance to look at a little bit later, because I know he's come up and had really dominated the minors, but has been struggling since coming to the majors. But let's see how this plays out for someone like Chase Burns, or let's look at his visual. And so now let's get rid of Mason Miller so we don't have to do any kind of comparison. But Chase Burns, you can see with his slider, he is also getting a high percentage of flailed pitches, here on the end of the bat. He is also getting pretty solid. Interestingly, they're basically on time with his pitch, but they're generally also quite a bit over it as well. So you can see the bat is above the ball and the ball is sneaking under, which means he probably has more break on it than hitters are expecting. But interestingly, when you can now go to their straight Statcast page and you can say, well, let's take a look at Chase Burns. And why it's interesting to me is because Chase Burns is, really came up pretty fast into the majors last year in 2025, had some struggles as a rookie, but has just dominated so far this year with a 2.92 expected ERA. But you can see here, what's interesting to me is I was trying to figure out what to do with these movement profiles, because when you look at it here, you'd say his slider doesn't look super impressive, not a ton of overall movement on it compared to other things, but it is in line with the kind of major league average and so forth. How can this be a super amazing pitch? But now when you see the data from the swing profile, this bat tracking can kind of see a bit more on it. But let's take a look at his pitching profile. Here's the slider here. He throws it 37% of the time. And then I want to get to the pitch run value score. So the run value on this slider is 9. It's his best pitch. So what you can see here is when he throws this pitch, he gets a strikeout for almost 49% of the time, whiffs half the time. The expected batting average is 151, slugging is 275. The expected weight on base average is 189. So you can see here, when he throws this pitch really well, he is pitching to super weak contact, and that's why this pitch is so valuable in terms of run value. And now we have a way to actually take a look at why that is occurring. And the reason it's occurring is so many people are swinging over this pitch, and they're not timing it up well, when we really couldn't see that before. So this may give us some insights for other pitchers of how we can take a look at this. Let's get back in here and let's do it by flawed swing again. You can see here's Chase Burns, and then this is why this pitch is so effective. So even though he is not leading in missed distance on this pitch, but he is really showing that he can deliver really weak contact to hitters. Let's look at the visual again on this pitch just to show you. We'll get rid of Mason Miller. But it is because the people are not, when they talk about that perfect contact where you're centered up, you're on time, and you're lined up, he is generating lots of flailing and lots of overswinging, which is leading to really imperfect contact. And as a pitcher, that's really what you want to do, and especially versus the average. So this is why this kind of tool can really help us out and really take a look at some pitchers, why they might be struggling or why they might be doing really well. Next thing you can do here is actually add in a specific player. So I have Nolan McLean, so I wanted to take a look at him and take a look at his pitches. And you can see here what's interesting is his missed distances were not super amazing. However, he does have some flawed swing percentages and some really low perfect contact ones and a relatively high strikeout rate and a low competitive swing rate. So for him, in this case, it's his curveball looks pretty good. So let's take a look at what his curveball looks like. Let's get rid of Chase Burns versus average. And you can see here when he is throwing his curveball, he does get a fair amount of flailing, but he's also getting quite a bit of people almost too early on his pitch. He's fooling them. Maybe it's how it comes out of his hand or how he hides the pitch, but he is getting pitches that are way too early out on the ball. That's going to lead to weak contact, and they are also often swinging over his curveball as well too, and that's really helping him deliver his value. But let's take a look at it because I want to look at him specifically in Statcast as well, going back and over here. So he's doing fairly well this year. He has a 3.98 average with a 3.36 expected ERA. But let's look at his curveball here. This is why I think this new tool is so much valuable versus just these movement profiles and so forth that he had so far. So his curveball has, a ton more movement than at least what people are expecting, the average curveball in the majors. Let's look at a run value and see if this supports this as well. Oh no, I gotta go to pitch value. This is in. So okay, let's go over to pitching versus bat tracking. Going to his pitching. This is what his curveball looks like and location of it versus the zone. And then let's find that run value. I really like to look at the run value data. And so his sinker is actually really good, but his curveball here. So his curveball, even though run value is only a 2, because he's only throwing it, 11% of the time, he should do this a lot more. Look at this. The expected batting average against his curveball is 0.76. His slugging is 0.87, and his expected weighted on-base average is 103, and his hard hit rate is 18.2. This is a super-duper nasty pitch. In fact, you probably... I don't know you want to overthrow your arm and stuff like that, but it's probably suggests he should be throwing it a bit more often if he's getting such weak contact on it and his strikeout rate is so high. This is obviously his go-to strikeout ball. However, you don't want to do that too much or hurt your arm, but this is shocking compared to the average expected weighted on-base average is about a 320. You can see some of the pitches are plus or minus that. His sinker's quite good as well too. We'll have to see if we can see that in some of the Statcast data. But his curveball is really, really, really nasty. So let's go back to the leaderboards for swing timing and miss distance, and let's go back to McLean and see if we can find his sinker if it's listed on there. And here it is here. Yeah, so here's his sinker. So his sinker, shockingly, was interesting to me. He's only 7% flawed contact and 23% perfect contact. Let's take a look at that and see what's going on here with that pitch. But these are the types of things that you can do. And now versus average. And you can see here why he's, he is generally by the average pitch. You can see eventually we can try to look at this and try to evaluate players, but the fact that he is generating so much lower hump here for centered pitches is really where his value is. He's really kind of beefing out the flailing and the tied up here on the edges of the curve. He's getting a bit more late swings on that pitch on his sinker than others, and he's kind of pretty much lined up as far as whether they're over or under the pitch. That's pretty in line with average, but that's how he's delivering value on this pitch by kind of beefing out the edges here about whether it's flailed or tied up contact, and being a little bit late on this pitch, which is interesting because they're a little bit early in his curveball, and now he's getting a little bit late on his sinker. So maybe that's how he can play games with pitchers. So you can see where this is going and the potential of this to help out. We are just in the early days, and when we're going to struggle and not really get it right in the beginning. But the amount of data that's at our fingertips to now evaluate pitchers and take a look at who we like and what they're not just a little bit more information behind their pitch shape, but you can see here with the flawed swing percentage, you can start to look at based on total swings who's the next kind of pitchers that we would expect to see. Like Dylan Cease has a pretty high rate of flawed swings. Grant Holmes is also an interesting one with a quite high amount of flawed swings. He also has high amount of perfect swings. Let's see if we can sort by perfect contact. So here's some people who are probably really struggling because everyone's making perfect contact against them. But now you can see here again some relievers who with some really low perfect contact results, which probably means you're going to end up with some really poor contact against them. That's how they can kind of generate. And here's Emerson Hancock. He's doing really well with that as well. Chris Sale is kind of living in this world as well too. So we can dig in this analysis and take a look at these pitchers in a totally different way than we could before, because you can even look at what's really with what's the competitive swing rate, where the fastest 90% of swings result in exit velocity of 90 plus mile per hour are deemed competitive. And then you can see who has the lowest in this case. Obviously it's Mason Miller, but then look at this Sean Manaea. That's super interesting that he has a really low competitive rate. But you can look Yuri Perez, you can Jacob Mizorowski. Here's some names that are starting to pop up as really well respected pitchers. I know in some of these Shota Managa's popped up in some areas as well, even though I know he's been struggling a bit this year. But it's interesting to see his name pop up with some of these pitches. But the types of pitches that people are struggling with, you can find this for all kinds of hitters. And in fact, there's a whole nother separate leaderboard that you can go to and work through on the hitting side of it, whereas who's getting the most lined up kind of contact and who's really flawed with their swings. So especially as hitters start to come up, we may be able to dabble this as later, maybe do another video on this as well to see versus what type of pitchers are making the most perfect contact. It's Kibron Hayes and Chandler Simpson, I guess contact guys, and who has the least amount of flawed swings. Stuff that you can do with hitters too. So we'll look at that and totally different, but this is a tool that I think you need to just play with and take a look at to see how we can evaluate pitching and pitching development and pitch shape in the future. We are always looking for the best tools. Subscribe to this channel if you want to win your fantasy baseball leagues, and check out this next video because this is what YouTube says you'll want to see next.